This is Street Knowledge with Chris Graham.
Welcome to the podcast. Chris Graham, and we'll be joined by Rod Mullins today. We're going to talk some NASCAR, some NHRA, some drag racing on Rod's part that'll be coming up maybe a little bit later this week. First, Rod, let's talk about Pocono. And Martin Truex Jr. wins the Monster Energy race. Kyle Busch wins the Xfinity Series race. And for Truex, after his championship season last year, and maybe hard to say, but sort of fallen back into the pack a little bit this year. Big win for him at Pocono this weekend.
Well, I think more than anything else, Chris, Martin Truex Jr. said to Kyle Busch, also to Kevin Harvick, and the rest of the NASCAR field there in the Monster Energy Cup Series, I'm still here. I may not be winning the races or winning the stages that I won last year, and all of these different things that have been going on with the Furniture Row team this year, but he definitely made a statement this time around by taking the lead with about 20 laps left to go with the race yesterday. And I think the big surprise was, if you believe in this sort of thing, I kind of use this sometimes when I talk to people, irony can be pretty ironic sometimes. And the funny thing that happened is Martin Truex stayed out on the track at Pocono with old tires. Last year, Kurt Busch, he ended up losing the race last year because he stayed out on old tires, and then turnaround Martin Truex stays out on old tires, opts not to get them, finishes the race up and comes up with a big win. And again, you have some of the drivers that come up short. Chase Elliott came up short out of this one. Kevin Harvick, he had a chance to probably try to win this thing because he had a car that definitely had some speed on it. Kyle Busch the same way. Kyle Busch in the post-race conference was saying right in front of Kyle Larson, he said, what I think cost us was a shoe booty. That's what he said. Somebody reached down, pulled their shoe booty off of their shoe and threw it out of the track. But he said, safety prevails in NASCAR. I don't know if it was just a slip up on Kyle Busch's part, what in the world was going on, but still, he had a chance to try to win the race, but could not, and Truex just came out of nowhere with those 20 laps or less to go and then wins the race.
So the calendar is now flipped to June, and I'm wondering, is it too early, too late even maybe, to start thinking about the playoff? It's June, so there's month of July, August to still go along with June in terms of the races and a chance to accumulate points. But are we starting to see guys jockeying for position to get themselves ready for the postseason, so to speak?
Yeah, I think so, and I think one of those drivers right now that is already positioned as in a very good place to pull this off is going to be Kevin Harvick. Kevin Harvick's had such a strong run so far on the season, but you can't rule out Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch is still in that playoff hunt as well. 4 wins: Texas, Bristol, Richmond, and Charlotte, and he's had 5 stage wins. But he's definitely showing a lot of people right now what he's made of. But now there's others that you can't really rule out of this whole thing. He doesn't have any wins yet, but Eric Almirola has really surprised a lot of people this season. And he had, I think, his 6 out of 7. Picked up his 6th or 7th top 10 finish yesterday at Pocono, and Eric Almirola moved over from Richard Petty, and he has been saying that he's got some great cars. They've been being able to put him out on the track and do really well this season, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the mix before it's over with. You've got questions though about some other people. Jimmy Johnson, is he going to make it? Well, there's some people that say, no, now's not the time to be panicking for Jimmy Johnson, but he says they're getting closer, and who knows, by the time we roll into Michigan next week, and then by the time we roll into Daytona for the second half of the season after the 4th of July holiday weekend, Jimmy Johnson could be looking at that stage where he could be back in the winner's circle, that something that's eluded him so far on the season. I can't rule out some other people in here too. Kyle Larson right now. Kyle Larson has 1 stage win, but he has no car wins or overall race wins so far on the season. And you've got to be wondering, when is his day going to come? And yesterday he had another good finish at Pocono. It's just a shame that he wasn't able to complete it. but I think he's going to come up with something in his hands before it's over with. I can't rule out Ryan Blaney at this point. Austin Dillon is still kind of in the hunt. He had a good finish, or at least had a good performance history during Pocono, and at one point was leading the race after he's had some bad luck with Daytona, or since Daytona. But you still have to include Brad Keselowski in that mix, Joey Logano, and, definitely we talked about Martin Truex. I think Martin Truex assessed to everyone else that, hey, he's still here. Is there a possibility he could be a two-time back-to-back winner? It's possible, especially after pulling off a win like he did yesterday.
So we're starting to think about the postseason, starting to think about the playoffs, and not too early to do that. Now, switching gears, I love using that on our racing podcast. The All-Star package. We talked about this the last couple of weeks about the All-Star package, what they did for the All-Star race in Charlotte. Now the talk is about using it at some more tracks. I know it was used this past weekend for the Xfinity Series race at Pocono. So, Rod, take us through this. Apparently, it's going to be extended in some more Monster Energy Cup races, too.
Yeah, Steve O'Donnell with NASCAR right now is talking that they are wanting to maybe try this out for 2 or 3 races. Now, they've not said what races are going to be in store. Who knows? We might see by the time we get to Daytona. They might have surprised us and say Michigan. Who knows? But they said definitely at least 2 or 3 races they are playing around with it. And Chris, it only comes as just a natural conclusion as to why they're wanting to do this. If they're racing in the All-Star event, a much better event than what we've seen in the post races since the All-Star break. And, of course, that was the Charlotte, the Coke 600, and then, of course, the Pocono race. Pocono wasn't really that thrilling to me either, except for maybe the final laps when Truex made his move. But if we get back to a sort of racing as to what we saw during the All-Star race, you're going to see a lot of passing. You're going to see some cars that are going to be slightly slowed down, but they're all going to be a little bit more evenly matched on the track, so to speak, when it comes to aerodynamics, downforce, the engine with the restrictor plate in there. It's going to make a difference for them, and you're going to see a lot more slinging around other drivers and taking advantage of that, the groove, whichever one that they find is the best one to go with. If they really get this package through, I at least predict that 2 of those races will be in the fall, at least for one of the races coming up, especially with the championship on the line. I think that you'll have that All-Star package probably a little bit later on. They definitely won't run it at the Roval when they go back to Charlotte in October, but we'll probably be seeing that on at least a mile and a half or a 2.5 mile track. We'll be seeing it sort of like that. We could see it at Pocono again. Who knows? We might be able to see it at Pocono when they go back later on this summer.
What is your sense of how drivers and especially maybe crews react to basically making the racing more competitive? I mean, it's fun for us as fans. It's important for the sport. But, the drivers and the crews, the engineers, they're all looking for every little advantage they can get. So what is your sense of the response from that side of things, to making things as even as possible with these kind of rule changes?
Well, I think the drivers are wanting to be more competitive against each other, and they don't want to go and take off and just run away with things. Now, if you were to go to Kyle Busch, and Kyle Busch says, hey, I've got a better car out here on the track, and I'm going to run away with it, Kyle's going to stick to that kind of philosophy. But you have some other drivers in there that want to be given a fair chance at that. And when I say other drivers, you have drivers in smaller programs, for example, that a Chris Buescher or somebody like that races in the JTG series with the race team with AJ Allmendinger. Those are teams right there that are looking for that big breakaway win that they can come up with and really put themselves on the map very quickly, sort of like in the same way that you have Martin Truex Jr., what he did with Furniture Road Racing last year. You've got some of the smaller teams that it kind of evens the playing field, so to speak. You've got your Kyle Busch team or your Joe Gibbs team that is out there that's getting good money, or at least we're saying good R&D money from Toyota to keep that car, or at least keep the Toyotas out there in front. Then you have Ford that has done well this year with Stuart Haas. They've been probably the leader when it's come to Ford. But then you've got Chevrolet, and Chevrolet was a little more competitive during the All-Star race as opposed to what they had been on the season. There's only one win in Chevy's stable this entire year, and that was Austin Dillon's win. And if you really want to say it, one big win when the big wreck happened yesterday in the Detroit Grand Prix. I don't know if you saw that or not, but the pace car wrecked. So that's about the only two things that Chevrolet could really lay claim to right now. So for the drivers, I think they're wanting a little bit more of an even package all the way around to satisfy the fans and maybe take some of this emphasis off your Kevin Harvick's and your Kyle Busch as dominating drivers throughout the season and give some other people a chance to make that chase.
Now, you shared with me in our article last week, we back and forth on this a little bit. Brad Keselowski blogged making a pitch for a NASCAR race car hybrid. Interesting article. I mean, going into the detail that reading through that, one thing I picked up on, and I want you to take us through this a little bit more, but F1 fans complaining, I guess they've been using the hybrid cars, and one thing they complain about is the lack of sound. You want to hear, like, F1 fans are like, we want to hear louder cars, basically, but other than that, and Brad took us through, like, how strategies might adjust with a hybrid car. I thought that was a great article that you shared. Take us through some of the thinking there on that.
Well, he sat down, and Brad Keselowski, here about a week ago, he wrote for the blog, for his page, and he wrote about it's time for a NASCAR hybrid. And I know that there are a lot of environmentalists that are out there. Of course, you've already mentioned about the loud noise, the noise pollution and things like that. And then there's the talk of gasoline, of course, the fuel and so forth. But to me, I think Brad Keselowski has set himself up for the possibility of being a car owner, or at least being an innovative car owner, or someone that's going to introduce this maybe to NASCAR before it's over with. You don't hear a whole lot from the NASCAR offices down in Daytona Beach about this, but to him, he says it's a no-brainer because there's already hybrids out on the road, and there's not really any hybrids in racing. The closest thing, as you said, in Formula One, and there's a lot of reasons behind that. But now for him, there's a lot of people that says they don't go to the F1 races anymore because they don't like the cars. They don't sound right. They've switched from the big engines to the small engines, and it's made the cars too quiet, exactly like what you said. They sound more like a vacuum cleaner. So, but to him, one of the factors is what they are going to, I think, push a little bit more is going to be this thing of where it's a hybrid, maybe with some sort of V8 engine kind of sound to it, or maybe even a four-cylinder or V6 in NASCAR. They're going to lose fans, but they've got to be able to come up with something that's still going to have the ability to make the noise, give that race car sensation, but they have to be looking toward the future. And I know that the NASCAR curve system that he's talking about in that article, and you can find it on Brad Keselowski's page, it's bradracing.com. But, he talks about something about having an extra reserve of electric energy, a nitrous button that would give drivers a boost whenever they needed it, when they maxed out. It could give them a full lap or two. He's got some ideas about this that I think are worth listening to. It's just a matter of NASCAR or a car manufacturer can get on the same page and rewrite the history book, so to speak, as to why this is going to happen. And he says more than anything else, it's going to change things when it comes to the environment. It's going to change things with the way you sell cars. That's going to be another thing about it. And to him, NASCAR would be more relevant to the car world than it ever has been. And to me, that's important right now because they have lost that win on Sunday, die on Monday mentality. That used to be a big thing even back 30 years ago when I was in radio. One of the things that people would talk about, you win that race on Sunday in a Monte Carlo, a Thunderbird, or a Pontiac Grand Prix, or one of the other cars that was out there, you were a cinch for somebody. If they were a NASCAR fan, they were going to go into a showroom somewhere in the United States, and they were going to consider buying a new car because if that's their favorite car that they won with, that their driver won with, they want that car. You don't have that now because Chevrolet has gone away from the Monte Carlo, Ford has gone away from the Thunderbird. We've dealt with Fusions, we've dealt with the SS, we've dealt with different kind of cars here, so to speak, over the years. It's time now to get back to this, to where they can get back to the association with NASCAR, with the street car, and the nameplate in order to be able to pull some fans across, and also, change some things in relation to the environment.
Hello, sir. I want to buy the Prius that Jimmy Johnson won the race in yesterday. Do you have one of those in stock? That's that's interesting though. I mean, yeah, I think the environmental aspect certainly. I mean, whether it gains new fans or not, I think you may see some new fans say, hey, look what NASCAR is doing. There's, the carbon footprints being reduced. They're more fuel efficient cars, and they're still moving around the track. And I wonder if folks wouldn't. At first it might seem weird to not hear the loud sound, but he pointed out too, Brad, in his blog, when you're in a situation where there's where the field's sort of idling as they're going through a caution, you would be able to flip the switch, and you would hear it almost like an entire silence. But then when everyone would be getting ready to go back to racing, and they'd flip the switch and go back to the power. That would make that even more stark. I mean, I can understand that thinking too. So it may enhance, in some ways, the sound that you hear. You feel the racing a little bit differently, and plus, again, all those environmental aspects in this new day and age that we're in.
Well, I don't think, and too, I don't think it's just going to be a battery car or electric car. It could be a variety of different things. I know they're working on so many different kind of models right now, and we're familiar with the hybrid cars when it comes to the electricity or the battery power. But, it's like you said, I wouldn't rule out exactly a nitrogen car before it's over with, or I wouldn't rule out a hydrogen car, I should say. I wouldn't rule that out right now at this point, because they've got to come up with something that's going to be able to generate still enough power, something that's going to at least create some sound. I think something I read here after I sent you that article, the thing is, NASCAR wants fans that's going to be watching the race and trying to talk to one another over the roar of the engine as they come down the straightaway. They don't want to be people in the stands talking rudely as the race is going on with a little electric car buzzing by as it goes down on the track. They still want to keep that sound and keep that thrill of going to the races, but it's just a matter of how they're going to do it.
I wanted to throw out something else too. Another switch of gears here. Dr. Henry Bock, the creator of the Safer Barrier, died this past week. I think it was on May 30th. And just wanted to get your thoughts. I mean, obviously, the Safer Barrier has really changed racing for the better in a lot of respects. And just get your thought. And of course, he had a lot of other innovations too. He was, as a medical doctor who worked in the racing industry. Had a lot of impact in lots of ways, but that Safer Barrier is what we'll sort of remember him for.
Yeah, the Safer Barrier, if you're not familiar with it, for people listening to the podcast, it's generally referred to as a soft wall, and it's found mostly on the oval racetracks. And Indy has it. Most of the NASCAR tracks have it. A lot of it was engineered, really put together. NASCAR started working with some people and started working with him, and also they started working with the Midwest Roadside Safety Facility at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, and they developed it long about the end of the 20th century, about 1998. They put it in place. It's really come through in a lot of great situations, because I think it has minimized the severity of impacts, so to speak, especially in the infield when you come flying down through there and you hit an infield wall, say, for example. But it's also helped a lot in the outer walls as well, on the outside of the track. And they're just really, more than anything else, the barriers are more than anything styrofoam blocks. And if you watch it during the course of a race, you'll see that. And when you see the cars coming by, you'll see a little bit of the vibration kind of lightly moving. But this styrofoam is pretty heavy-duty stuff. And if somebody hits that wall, there is an initial thing that kind of, how can I say it, kind of takes a little bit of the impact, and it kind of pushes in, and then it kind of pushes back out in order for the car to have that little bit of a cushion. I've seen times where they've had to replace these things, and where they've hit that outer bit of a wall, and they have to go in and they have to replace those styrofoam, those little slabs that they put in there. But it's definitely been one of the great innovations that they had, and they've had in NASCAR. And I tend to wonder too, would this have helped a little bit more if this had been in full pledged for, so to speak, with Dale Earnhardt. If Dale Earnhardt might not have left us so early, but of course, there's a different situation too. That has to do with the way that the Hans device and the way that the neck snapped back with Dale Earnhardt. The impact. It didn't look like a bad wreck back then too. When I've gone back and I've watched the video of it, it didn't look like a bad wreck at all. But you've got to understand the body is under a lot of stress. It's under a lot of physical stress at that time, and for as the saying goes, when it comes to physics, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. And there's a reason why Danica Patrick would go and throw her arms up and really cross her chest right before she hit a wall, and that was to keep her from possibly breaking her wrist or also breaking an arm, being able to do something like that. And I know that some of the NASCAR drivers at first made fun of her for doing that, but then as they went back and they watched it, she didn't have a whole lot of room inside of her Indy car, but it was a safety thing to not make that wheel jerk back on her and jerk her wrist in a direction that her body is trying to go the opposite in. And so there's been a lot of safety things that's come through, but this safer barrier, it's been a miracle, I think, so far on the years that they've had this since it's been instituted.
Yeah, I was thinking about Dale Sr. as you were talking as well there. Now, so last thing we'll get into, NHRA returns to Virginia. First time since 2009, and so take us into that. And also, I think coming up in a couple days on Wednesday, I like how you put it when we were trading emails. You're going to be defending Augusta Free Press's honor in the Media Challenge drag race. So NHRA and then Rod in a drag race car going 100-plus miles an hour. Take us through it all.
Well, the NHRA is going to be returning to Virginia for the first time since 2009. They will be at North Dinwiddie, Virginia, for the Virginia NHRA Nationals. And like I said, it's been 9 years since they have been there. And this will be the stop that they make before they go to Thunder Valley here in about a week. So that's going to be a real treat. I think a lot of the drivers are looking forward to going back to Virginia Motorsports Park, and they're really looking forward to it. I know Ron Capps was talking about it. He's been saying a lot of things about anxious to get back and race there. Then you've got John Force, you've got the daughters, Ashley and Courtney, are going to try to at least do something to try to regain some of the bad luck that they've been having. I don't know if you caught any of it this past weekend, but John Force had another car explosion as he was going off the line, and I know a lot of people were probably looking for Ron Capps to kind of jump at him a little bit later on in one of the staging races and say that John Force just doesn't have it anymore. And Capps was very complimentary. He said, John Force is what's made us where we're at today in one portion or another. That you're going to have Clay Milligan is going to be there, and he came off of a big win this past weekend, as well as Robert Height. They were at the Route 66 drags there outside of Chicago in Illinois. So they had some good performances this past weekend. Some Matt Hagan didn't quite make it where he was looking to at least advance. He's had an up and down season so far, and if you're not familiar with Matt Hagan, he's out of Christiansburg, Virginia. He's a cattle farmer, and then he's a drag racer when he's not doing that. And he's a fun person to be around and talk to. And we've talked about farming before and different things. So it'll be a good event. It'll be a homecoming for him, so to speak. He's kind of going to be in between. It's kind of going to be two tracks he's kind of going to be home for. Just the Virginia track there, just outside of Richmond, and then of course coming to Thunder Valley in about another week. So that'll be fun. But as for me, on Wednesday, we have the Thunder Valley Media Challenge, where Augusta Free Press will be represented by me, and I'll be down there. We're going to be drag racing against other members of the media, radio, TV, newspaper, social media, and we'll be in Camaros, all equal, and we will be drag racing down Thunder Valley at the stretch. And last year, I think I looked down at the speedometer, and I think I hit on the speed somewhere around 110 in one of my races. And I made it up to the semifinals last year and then got bumped out. But I'm looking at trying to get into the finals this year. A lot of tough competition. Some of the, and I mean this nicely, some of the older guys are a little bit better on me on speed than I guess I'm used to. It's probably my generation of electronic fuel injection as opposed to being able to really pump the clutch if you want to be able to do that. So it'll be fun on Wednesday. We'll have a recap of that and let you know what happened and how I fared after it's all over with.
You know, I've mentioned on some of our podcasts that I come from a racing family, and you know, talking about this media challenge race reminds me of way back in the day. One of my cousins, among the cousins of mine who race, allowed me to ride with him in a car. I was writing a story for the local paper I worked for when I started my career back 20 plus years ago. He let me ride with him as he was dragging his car. It was a '68 Camaro. We got up to 139 miles an hour. Now, I was not driving, you know, because I was just riding, but it was a heck of, you know, going from 0 to 139 was a tremendous experience. And I'm not sure, you know, I don't know. I'm not sure I would want to do it again. It was fun, but it sounds like, I mean, from your standpoint, how far is how long is the track that you'll be racing on Wednesday?
Well, the track is best known for just it's a long valley down through there, and on the estimates of the track for the length of it and so forth. I just know that I've just got to put the foot down. I've got to put the foot down. I got to hammer it down to where the timer's at, and then after I hit the timer and I know that I've passed that point, I can let up. But you know, if you keep on pressing, you're going to go to the end of Thunder Valley, all the way down here at the very end at Bristol Dragway. So you have to let off pretty quick. But it's a really great track. They went back here several years ago after Bruton Smith and Speedway Motorsports acquired Bristol Motor Speedway. They went back and they decided they were going to renovate it, and they've done the same thing down at Charlotte. They have the track down there. I think it's the Z-Max track that they had, the drags, and they've expanded to 4 lanes down there. So you got 4 lanes all the way across. Bristol's not going to have that, I don't think, not at least in the immediate future. And they still have the 2 lanes, but it's a really great track. That was the first time I'd ever done anything like that last year, and they got us out there, and so I'm kind of pumped about doing this again. This is going to be a fun thing. You're in a Camaro ZL1, and they're all equally prepared, and nobody has an upper advantage or a higher advantage on the other. It's just how well you're going to be able to get off the mark when that light turns green and you're ready to go down that track.
Well, we're going to be rooting for you to come back with the win, do a couple donuts in our honor, and then we'll see what happens, right?
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Let's just hope that you're not scraping me off the wall down through there, or you're coming to visit me down at the local hospital.
You know, you're gonna bring back the championship. We could just rest here. Well, Rod Mullins. Okay, so we'll talk with you next week. We'll talk about the drag races. We'll talk, of course, about the latest in NASCAR as well. Thanks again for your time.
I appreciate it, Chris. Thank you.